Trevor, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about your current exciting startup, Day Optimizer.
So Day Optimizer is a web app that helps freelancers and entrepreneurs gain more control of their time, reason about their time better by converting their task list into a daily schedule.
Very nice. And I was looking at the website. You've got a full blog there with so many great ideas.
Yeah, I'm trying to not just focus. So a lot of what I do is come up with new concepts around time management that help people, and then encode those into software and to Day Optimizer has a 3-step process I developed for helping create a more optimized schedule or a better or more effective schedule. And so I integrate some of those concepts into the software. And then a lot of times I blog about the concepts before I even get a chance to get it into the software.
I know you give a 7-day free trial. Now, is this an app you can get on your phone or iPad, or is it through computer?
You can install it on your phone, but it's not available in the app stores yet. So what you would do is you log on, you go to my.dayoptimizer.com, you can register, and then you can save it as an app on your screen. So it's what's called a progressive web app. So it can be saved and used as any other app on your mobile device, but it can also be used on your desktop as a full-blown kind of desktop application.
Okay. Most of my audience are entrepreneurs and small business owners. So what's involved in getting an app on the market?
You mean in like on the App Store?
Yeah, what's involved with the technology? Like for you to create Day Optimizer, did you do that or did you contract out?
Yes, so I come from a development background, so I did that, and that is one of the reasons why it's not on the App Store is because there's additional complications to get it on the App Store, and the value right now isn't quite there because most people plan their day from on a desktop, and my target are again freelancers and entrepreneurs who work from their laptops primarily. They're not working primarily from their phones.
Okay.
So the model kind of works better as this responsive web application. So you develop an application that works fine on a desktop, but then when you shrink it down to a mobile device, it actually changes the user interface to work well on a mobile device too. And there are some special technologies you can use that allow you to then install that application as an app on the phone. But that's why it's called a web app, because it's going to be a website that you visit that serves up an app that then you can save. And so I can give instructions for people how to do that. But then if I want to put it in the App Store, I then have to wrap that in some additional wrappers, and I have to go through the whole Apple application process and Google application process. So those will be coming, but because most of the people who sign up are coming first through their computer, their desktop, it hasn't been a priority for me right now.
How are you reaching your customers? How do you get them to your website?
Variety of different methods. I use some Google ads and Facebook ads. I primarily have been using that to kind of test out different messaging because particularly Google is a wonderful platform for testing intent-based messaging. And then I also go out and I have been speaking to people on podcasts. I go and I write blog posts and do the search engine optimization type stuff and focused on different ways of creating inbound marketing. People who are out there talking about time management productivity and reaching out to them and saying, hey, here's a new app you may be able to recommend to your readers that could help them with this specific techniques. So there's lots of people out there talking about why it's important to schedule your tasks. And a lot of those recommendations focus on Google Calendar, which is not optimized for scheduling your tasks. You can do it, and absolutely, if you have no other tool, schedule your tasks in Google Calendar. But when you need to start rearranging your tasks or you're scheduling your tasks day after day and tasks are flowing from one day to another because you didn't get them done the previous day, it starts getting tedious copying tasks, moving tasks in Google Calendar. So a more optimized app like Day Optimizer works better.
How do you get feedback on intent-focused messaging on Google?
Great question. So I use a three-step process to kind of drill down into messaging using primarily the intent platforms like Google. Is I will first come up with three different value propositions that I want to test, or three different core messages. And then I might, so with the optimizer, maybe I might test overwhelm, someone getting overwhelmed, someone wanting to accomplish more,
Yeah.
right? And then someone who wants to focus on better prioritization, right? So maybe those are my three core value propositions I want to talk about. Then I'll create three different headlines or three different ways of stating that value proposition. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to test a specific way of saying the value proposition and have that, the way I happen to write it, be the thing that failed or succeeded, not the actual value proposition itself. So I like to create three different variants that describe the value proposition in different ways. And so those, now I've got 9 headline ads, right? I will often, if I'm doing this strict, is use the same exact text, like the second 2 lines for each of those. So I'm only varying the headline ad, varying the headline, and then run them all with equal weighting so that Google is showing them all equaling and not trying to optimize. Because if Google optimize it, it does premature optimization. The second it starts seeing an ad performing better, it starts serving it more, and then you get skewed results. But so say I run these 9 ads, and to make the math easy, let's say there was 900 impressions. So I've got 100 impressions like per each. Now I can look at the click-through rates across each of those ads to see which ones are bubbling to the top, right? And this is a method that really helps. You don't even have to, in theory, have your website at all to make this work. You can test the messaging before you have anything kind of written. You do need a base landing page for Google to be able to, they won't put up the ad unless it corresponds with the landing page. But
that's running ads through Google?
That's running ads through Google.
Okay.
Yeah. But you could use the same with any kind of intent-based. You could, in theory, run this. Yes. So actually, you can also run this strategy with Facebook as well.
Yep.
Facebook is more of a identity or persona-based thing. So like there, I can test what I would test with Google. What I would do is I would then divide things into different keyword groups. Once I have my messaging down, divide in different keyword groups and say, okay, are there certain intents that are tying into certain messaging better, right?
Okay.
So if it's particularly like when you're starting a business, you want to start with the buying intent, so lower down on your funnel. So you want to be testing words like price, buy, coupon, versus when people are saying this versus that, things that are talking about like they're now getting down to the point where they're really trying to buy. And then I might like test those messages with those different groups to kind of see which one is going to have the best buying intent. With Facebook stuff, what I would do is I would divide it up into like, say 3 different personas and then test those messages. I would probably test fewer messages because if I had 3 personas, 9 different headlines, that's 27 variations, few too many. So maybe I would like first test on Google because I can test like just what people are actually actively out there looking for with Google, figure out the messaging that resonates with that, then bring that over to Facebook and say, okay, which populations, which audiences kind of work well. So maybe I might say, let me go with professionals from age 30 to 50. Let me look at people who are just starting a freelancing business, right? And kind of target them with the interest targeting that Facebook allows you to do. And maybe the third group I might target like larger teams, like people who have like growing concerns, and divide those up and then see how my different messaging resonates with each of those. Again, the same thing, I want to run equal numbers across those. So that way it makes the math easier and I can kind of see which rises to the top.
So a lot of people, entrepreneurs that use Facebook ads and Google ads probably don't know about all this background feedback that they can get, those tools at their disposal, really.
Yeah, it's just there's lots of different techniques you can apply to Facebook and Google. And I'm an amateur compared to the experts out there that do this. I saw a talk a couple years ago at MicroConf, which is a conference for micropreneurs and people who are trying to run small businesses, all around this process on how to optimize ads for Facebook. And it was wonderful.
Hmm. In, pre-pandemic, how many conferences did you usually attend every year?
I focused on only maybe one or two conferences a year. I
Okay.
don't, conferences for me require a lot of time because I do a lot of prep work to kind
Yeah.
of like figure out who I want to meet at the conferences. Then there's attending the conferences, and then there's all the follow-up networking work. There's the follow-up integration work of the ideas. And a lot of conferences tend to have, you're dealing with strategic ideas and strategic changes directions. You very rarely are going to go to a conference so you can come back and make like a 1% tweak to your business,
Yeah.
right? So you don't want to be doing like large strategic changes to your business more than once or twice a year.
Right.
And that's not also not a great place where I'm sourcing leads because I'm doing a marketing driven business right now. If I was doing a sales driven business that was very focused on the conference circuit, like where as a lead source, then obviously I would be doing a lot more. But
Right.
as a marketing driven business, it doesn't make sense to do a huge number of conferences because I just can't consume and integrate all that effectively.
Is it important to have a niche or a very specific target audience, or do you say you try a bunch of different ones and see what sticks?
Well, it's important to have a niche. I think when starting out to be able to create targeted content and things like that, and that also it's useful to have what Jeffrey Moore defines as a market, which is a group of people who share the same problem, who talk to one another.
Hmm.
And the who talk to one another is important because if they're not talking to one another, them sharing the same problem isn't a market. They're a persona, they're something else, but they're not a market because the value of the talking to one another is they start referring, you start developing reputation in that market. And so the smaller the niche is, the less money you need to spend to, or less effort either way, to create a reputation within that small group. So that's important. However, I think there are two ways of finding what niche is useful for you. One is the hypothesis driven and one is the emergent driven. So the hypothesis driven is to say, okay, I think based upon what I know, this app would be most useful or this business is going to serve these customers the best.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I go and try to sell those customers. Does that work or not? Okay, if it works, great. If it doesn't, now I got to come up with another hypothesis. I'm kind of jumping around hypothesis. If I'm working my business by reverse engineering, by saying I belong to this market, like, I'm a nurse and I'm developing software for nurses or a service for nurses. Okay, that's easier. The emergent one is more there. Okay, I have this software that solves a problem, but I don't know which niche is optimal for that yet.
Mm.
So let me go out and target a bunch of different people to see what emerges. And that's actually where that Facebook strategy can be really useful, is if you can niche down to different personas on Facebook and use what you believe your messaging to be, your key value for your new product or service to those markets, you can let the market, that niche, emerge out of that because you can see who's resonating with it and go, okay, that's the one that apparently is resonating. Let me go with it. It helps to pair that with just an analysis of, is this going to be a market that I can actually serve? Like maybe they can't, they need it, but they don't have the money, so you can't cost effectively serve it. Or it's a market you can't cost effectively reach, And that's why, if you're familiar with like business model canvas, the value proposition canvas, those things are really useful to kind of look at your business from a more strategic perspective and say, is this market, is this business something that I can actually effectively serve?
Was that your last startup where you had, was it strategic? I'm trying to remember the name.
Strategic Life Tools. So that is
That's where you
the
could, and then say, well, now we're going to compare this. And I saw the split screen and now you changed one element on the right and now it gave you new answers on the left.
well, Strategic Life Tools was more focused on um, um, helping people develop better life plans and figure out where they want to go in their life. And it was supposed to be a content-based site and training people with these kind of tools, much like how you have on your site. You've got these lists of resources and stuff like that. In fact, actually, I pulled up before our call because you've got your the different hats we wear, right? And I have something called my life portfolio, which is a very similar thing. There's different pillars. That is my personal pillar, my community pillar, professional pillar, job pillar, et cetera. And then within there, I kind of look at what are the different things that I'm doing. I don't term it in terms of roles, in terms of activities, but it's a very similar way of breaking down your life, analyzing, and then seeing how you want to allocate your life across it. So those are the types of tools that help us think strategically about our life so we can live a more deliberate life or a more strategic life. So the name of the actual business is incorporated as Strategic Life Tools. I pivoted away from that to create Day Optimizer because with this business, I really wanted to create a monthly subscription business. My last business was an enterprise software business. You start every month at zero revenue. And it's a very hard business model to make work, especially since sales is not my strong suit for that. So I thought I could make that work with Strategic Life Tools, went into it, developed the whole site, and then realized that people tend to do life planning more on cusp events. So I just graduated, I just got divorced, I just changed jobs. That's when they go back and say, okay, let me review my life. Let me think about what my direction is. They're not tending to do it on a monthly basis, doing like these strategic reviews. Some people who are doing like getting things done will do like their nicely weekly reviews, but those are more operational level stuff. They tend not to be full blown strategic, where am I going with my life type things. So I pivoted away from that. I said, okay, this business doesn't align with my goals and how I want to grow a business. So I was running a mastermind group at the time and everyone was struggling with time management. So I took a technique that I had developed like 8 or 10 years ago, this 3-step process for building a daily schedule, and basically created a tutorial on it, showed them how to do it on paper, created an Excel spreadsheet with 3 tabs, and then said, I can actually make that into software. It's a simple enough concept to start. And with the way software works is everything gets way more complex and explodes in complexity once you start getting into it. So I knew I needed to start simple. And yeah, I was just able to kind of build from there into this product. And when you start talking about daily planning, that aligns, the value model aligns really well with the pricing model I wanted, right? If you're using something every day to plan your day, paying a monthly fee is a no-brainer.
Right.
Whereas if you are planning your life once a year, paying a monthly fee, they're misaligned. So I didn't actually think through properly the structural alignment between the business I was creating and the business I wanted. And I pivoted. So
that's great. And I could see that you would save people an awful lot of time with having a system of, with the Canvas model and things like that, where you're figuring that stuff out before having the market have to figure it out. So you're going into it.
Yeah, to be clear, like the business model Canvas is not mine. That is Alex Oster. I will pronounce his name totally wrong. Osterwalder. Business model Canvas and value proposition Canvas. He studies business models. Forget what, I think he's at one of the universities, but you can go back. There's a book called Business Model Canvas, and there's a new one called Value Proposition Canvas. They are amazing at teaching you how to strategically think about your business.
And it has a lot of illustrations, right? It's a lot of line drawings.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So we'll have to look up that for sure. Now, pivoting a little bit here, I love your idea of having a theme, and you had that for both segments of your life and also for the year, a word for the year. You know, in
Yeah.
past, you've had pruning as one word, scene change, vigor, and 2020, your word of the year is?
Eudaimonia. If I can't pronounce the Greek, so I don't know if that's right or not.
You know, I looked on YouTube for the pronunciation, and there was 4 different pronunciations, whether it was a British person or, so I figured I'd have you do it. Now, tell us about how does this help you?
um, I think a theme is useful as a kind of a touchstone to look and say, what am I doing right now and in these weeks and these months? Are they kind of tying back into the theme, tying into where I want to be going with my life? And I also have long-term life goals and things like that. Themes are useful to create rhythms. You know, people will talk about the seasons of life or the chapters of life. And I think particularly at the year level, or also I've used themes at the month, a month, week, and day level. They can be used to focus your thought processes and where you want to go in a way that having like a longer term life plan doesn't so much. And it's also a way to kind of explore a theme over a year. I actually haven't been exploring my theme as much as I wanted to. So Eudaimonia is the like how to live a good life essentially. And that's both it's a little bit complex. It's not just living a good life internally, but it's a good life how other people perceive you as well. But part of my goal was to read some of the original Greek philosophers on what that meant. And I have not done that so far this year. COVID kind of sidetracked everything and made it, I haven't been as focused on that part of the theme, but I have been, I do use it as a way to color what I do in my life. So I am definitely focused now when I build this startup on building at a measured pace. So previously how I built businesses is I dove in, put as much energy as I possibly could and tried to like, you know, shut out all the other aspects of my life just to build a business, right? And that is not sustainable long term, right? I mean, we're here to live life as well as just run businesses. And so the term eudaimonia is a reminder to say, don't forget while you're building this business that you're also here to be living a good life.
Right.
You know,
What percentage of people do you think do this kind of thing of, you know, creating a theme for the year and this sort of being proactive and really looking at your life in a beautiful way, like how am I connecting everything together and what do I want to do, as opposed to just being in the moment and just dealing with one, you know, catastrophe after another, you know, putting out one fire and just going along.
yeah. So I think there are overall, I don't think like it's a huge percent of the population, maybe 10 or 20%. It'd be hard for me to gauge. I also think that there's different people who approach it. So I'm an analytical person. So I approach it from an analytical perspective and I'm a planner. So I think through of like, okay, where do I want to be in 5 years, 10 years? What does my kind of plan look like? Themes are also, and I use themes to kind of color some of that, but there are people who will just use themes and not use any sort of planning. So they're just saying like, you know, oh, I want to focus on being nicer to people this year, or I want to focus on more joy, or people who create vision boards are very much using this as a way to create a direction. So I often make the distinction when we talk about planning or life goals of the difference between a direction and a destination. So a destination is, I know where I want to be going. I want to achieve these things. A direction is, I don't know exactly where I want to wind up, but I know I want to head in this direction.
Right.
So both are going to get you there. One is kind of a little bit more journey focused, and constantly you're trying to reorient. The other is destination focus, and then trying, okay, there's multiple paths to get there. What's the best way to what's the best path to get there? And then there's also a third thing where people are very kind of present focus and figuring out, trying to get away from something. So they're not heading towards something. They're saying, I want to leave these things behind. So they're walking away from things as well. So those are kind of three different ways people plan, is to, decide to get away from something, to pick a direction, and also to pick a goal. And I think they're all valid, but they use different things. So you'll see people use things like mottos and themes as ways to create direction, even if that doesn't create a specific goal.
Trevor, you seem like a great example of someone who's super creative, but also you've got that analytical side. So what is your creative process? How do you stay creative, and how do you manage that line between, they used to say the two sides of the brain, but I think they've now found that there's parts of creativity in both sides of the brain, and it's not just so simple left and right.
Yeah, creativity is super complex. How do I manage my creativity? That is a great question. I would say in a couple different ways. So I've actually been in a creative spurt for the past about month. And I'll talk about a couple ways I created that creative spurt. Was I decided that I wanted to write a book before my next birthday last month. So I'm writing a book on productivity. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways of creating that creativity was to first separate out the different processes of the creative process. Mm-hmm. So outline writing and editing is a classic thing whenever you're writing. There's three different ways of thinking, and there are three different creative processes. So I kind of separated those out. So I outlined the whole book. Then what I did is I just scheduled time in my day, and I set a daily goal. I set a goal that in 25 days I wanted to write 25,000 words. So that came out to 1,000 words a day. In the beginning, I had no clue how long it was going to take to write 1,000 words a day. Turns out on average, I write around 10 words a minute. So 1,000 words is around 100 minutes, call it 2 hours, right? I discovered that over time. So again, this is something where I actually did have a goal, but then I kind of picked a direction of the goal because I didn't know the path to the goal. So I just picked a direction, and I set a speed. So I said, okay, if I'm going to hit that goal, it's 25,000 words. I need to do 1,000 words a day, but didn't actually know how that speed was going to work. So I gave myself constraints, which is one of the keys to creativity. Is creativity requires constraints. If you don't have constraints, it's very difficult to be creative. You look at a blank page, you can stare at it, and everything has to just come completely from inside. Whereas if, like, say I told you to write a story about a blackbird, a red automobile, and a cliff, you could probably start writing. But if I gave you a blank page and started writing, it would be much more difficult. Mm-hmm. So a lot of creativity comes through these constraints. So I set the constraint of saying, okay, I'm going to have to write this much. And then I just scheduled it in my calendar where I was going to write 2 hours a day. And then, of course, one of the reasons I focus on productivity is because I'm horrible at productivity. As so many people in life, the people who study it are the people who studied it for a reason. Right. And I didn't hit that every day. So many days I did, because I've gotten much better at it. So I'm writing and writing, and then some days nothing. Like my day completely went sideways. I had to do some other work. So then I'm trying to play catch up. And then I had these points where I would then check in and say, is this direction the place I need to be going? So originally I said my goal of 25,000 words. And then about halfway through, I realized that I had more to write on the topic than my original outline had, and it wasn't going to be 25,000 words. So that was a process of calibrating my goal and calibrating. So I still kind of tried to keep to my pace, but recognized I wasn't going to hit that goal. So I'm now on day 3 of my extension. I'm very big on setting a limit and then trying to keep that as a hard limit. But if you can't meet that limit, not treating it as, oh, I blew the limit, everything's gone.
Right.
But hitting snooze, right? Okay, so I wanted to sleep for 8 hours. The alarm went off. I'm not done. I hit snooze. So I got 10 minutes. It's not that I turn off the alarm. And so I gave myself a 5-day extension. And so there's that process of creating pacing, constraints, direction. I think kind of help with that creativity is come up with some vision that you want to go to, create a pace to get there, and then just choose a direction and then reorient as you go along.
And I love that idea of pace, that you can control that. Very interesting stuff. Are you a journal writer?
I was years ago. In fact, my first book was a travel log around the US, but I have not journaled for a long time now. I keep trying to get the habit because it's so valuable, because it helps you reflect on your life. It helps you celebrate your achievements. It's great for doing gratitude type stuff where you can do gratitude journals. I really believe in journaling. I just have not been able to develop the discipline yet around that.
What I've tried in the last 2 years that's worked for me is an audio journal, where throughout the day I'll just jot down little things that come up that I want to journal about, and then when I'm driving home from work, I'll just have my little digital recorder and just blab about the day. I'll say today is September blah blah blah, and then just blab, and that's it. It's an MP3. You just save it, external hard drive, and you've got so you're capturing the most important 7 or 8 things that happen every single day.
Nice. I like that idea. Yeah.
And it's quick too. It's not like when you sit down, and that's why I've gone into podcasting, because it's so you can get so much material done in a quick amount of time. Imagine if we were to write this, interview.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And actually that was the foundation for my book was actually a webinar I gave earlier in the spring on productivity tips for working at home. And so what I did is, I gave that webinar and I put together the slide deck with no intent of writing a book. And then a bunch of factors came into play that made me realize I should write this. And so I just took the transcript, and that became my first version of my outline. And then I kind of went from there. Right?
Do you have a good source for transcripts?
Temi is what I use. It does AI transcripts, multi-party AI transcripts, and they are also part of a bigger company where you can pay for humans to transcribe as well.
TEMMY?
TEMI.
Okay.
Yeah, and they even have an app that you can record directly into the app, hit save, it will upload, and it will transcribe within a minute or 2.
And that's a paid service?
It's a paid service. It's like I think it's like 10 cents a minute. Oh, now it's 25 cents a minute, but still, like, compared to, it's super cheap to transcribe stuff. They've got an editor where you can actually go and like, cause it's AI transcription, so it's not perfect. You can listen and kind of edit inline, assign speakers. It's a well-done service.
Trevor, how do you consume the news each day? And what types of things do you like to read?
I have redeveloped my news addiction, which is bad. I used to have a rule, and I still believe in the rule, that you shouldn't read news unless it's actionable. Like, if I can't have an effect on the news in the world, then it's just candy, right? It's not something that is going to affect my decision-making in any way. But I have started reading it because it's candy. So the Apple News app basically is where I'm getting most of my news these days, because they're surfacing interesting stories to me. And then I try to also, because a lot of the standard news reporting can be depressing sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I use like things like futurism.com as a place to kind of go see, oh, what are the new innovations coming out? What are the things that might transform the world? And that's always an inspiring way to kind of read some of the news.
That's futurism.com.
Yeah, futurism.com.
Okay, great. And any books that you're reading or have read that have been really important that you recommend?
Ooh. I don't read books much. I listen to them via audio. Cal Newport's Deep Work is a great book. And that I would definitely recommend that right now. There are many books in the past and they're not coming to mind, but I would say Cal Newport's Deep Work.
Great. What's a hobby you enjoy that most people may be surprised about?
Swing dancing.
I read about that.
Yeah.
Now, do you watch Dancing with the Stars?
I do not. I've watched a couple episodes, and that's something that I'm like, it would be fun to kind of watch them, but I'm much more an experiential person than a watching person.
Yeah.
Like, I never got why people watch sports, because I'm there like, why wouldn't you want to do it? Like, and a lot of the people do it as well. But like, for me, I'm much more about, if I have the choice between actually doing it and sitting on the TV and watching it, I'm going to actually do it. So
now swing dancing, that's very athletic. How long you been doing that?
9.5 years.
Wow. Do you do the, tossing the woman up in the air and the flipping around and all that?
I have done some aerials. Yeah.
Okay.
So
great.
Most of what I focus on these days. So I learned Lindy Hop and Charleston and some of the classic ones, but I've kind of shifted a lot more into Balboa, which is often described as like the tango of swing dancing. It's a little bit older crowd that tends to dance it, and you're doing less aerials. So
yep. Wow. Would you like to go back in time for the old swing era and be dancing there in the ballroom with Benny Goodman playing or Count Basie?
Oh yeah, I think that would be awesome. Like to go and check those things out.
Now, let's see. Where can people go to find out more information about you and your work?
Yeah, so as we talked about at the beginning, people can go and get a trial of Day Optimizer at dayoptimizer.com. There's also a blog there that will have lots of different techniques about productivity and time management. And that is on Twitter at Day Optimizer app. Facebook is Day Optimizer. LinkedIn is Day Optimizer. Basically, search for Day Optimizer, you'll find it. And then me personally, I've got my professional blog is at fastfedora.com, which provides all these sort of tips on starting companies and different things to think about around entrepreneurship and different just general thoughts I have. I haven't blogged on for the past couple of years, but there's lots of great old content there.
Have you found any social media platforms better than others for getting the word out and getting you people to come to your site?
I suck at social media. So I would say the answer there is no. I like Facebook and LinkedIn because you can actually like write more than Twitter. But I'm not, I guard my attention strongly. And so these platforms that are designed to just gobble up and consume your attention and gamify it so where you just want to keep going and going and going. I try to avoid those. So like with Facebook, I use something called deep bookmarks with Facebook, for instance, where I have deleted I bookmark the specific pages on Facebook I want to go to. So facebook.com/messenger gets me to Messenger, /groups gets me to groups. I think it's /events gets me to events, those sort of things. For the specific pages, I'll go to my profile page if I want to post something. So I try to avoid the homepage of all these services, because when you go to the homepage, you get this feed, and the feed is designed to get you addicted and just start reading and reading and reading. And suddenly half an hour is gone.
Right.
And you do sometimes get value to it. So it's not completely valueless, but the amount of value that I get in proportion to the amount of time that I have, and then the distractibility it creates in my brain.
Right.
You know, I obviously have to use it to promote my business and stuff like that, but I specifically create bookmarks to specific sites. And I've also deleted, because the browser will remember, if you go to facebook.com, it remembers that you went there, and it kind of autofills it if you start typing it. But you can actually, in Chrome at least, you can delete the history so it will not pre-fill anymore. So I've done that. So now I just, even if I forget and I start typing Facebook, it then gives me the link to my profile page. Like, okay, well, we're going there, and
Right.
avoiding that news feed.
Well, you're a lot more disciplined than most of us.
I just have, I'm not disciplined. I've developed strategies to avoid distraction.
Okay.
So, you know, there's that, what is it? The famous marshmallow experiment, and where the kids had to avoid eating the marshmallow.
Yes.
Do you know about that one?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people think those kids had greater willpower, but from what I read, and I might be getting this wrong, but from what I read, the kids that were successful weren't because that they stared at the marshmallow and said, I'm not eating the marshmallow, I'm not eating the marshmallow, I'm not eating the marshmallow. They actually had developed a bunch of distraction strategies. So they would just look away, you know, and they would do other things. So again, my deep bookmark technique is a way for me to not even see it. You know, it's the strategy when you go to the grocery store that you don't go in the inside aisles, you just go around the outside. If you're not going down the aisle, you can't see it, so you're not going to buy the bad food. So, yeah, a lot of it, I think, is learning good distraction strategies rather than learning how to have better willpower, being better productive, or things like that.
So you must be the enemy for great marketers. They don't like people like you.
No, I don't think they like people like me.
No, you throw a monkey wrench in the whole operation.
Yeah.
My final question, Trevor, is what's one powerful action step our listeners can take to help them live a more joyful, productive, and fulfilling life?
Let's see. So can I, I have to pick one. That's hard. So the one I often say is practice scheduling your time. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're using Daptonize or calendar. You don't even have to like schedule a whole day, but the psychological benefit from saying I'm starting at this time and I'm going to spend an hour on it. You create an objective trigger on when you're going to start. You create a mindfulness checkpoint at the end where you get to say like, okay, is this the most important thing I'm working on? Okay, I'm going to keep working on it. If not, let me put it aside and switch to the next thing. And then actually by creating that time block, you create something called artificial time scarcity, which increases your focus during that time. So you can use these techniques to kind of beat procrastination, because if I've got the objective start time, it's harder to procrastinate. To increase your focus because you've got that limited time block, and then to increase your mindfulness about like not getting lost in tasks, especially with research tasks, which can tend to like explode, and you thought you're going to spend like half an hour on, and it's now 2 hours later. So just doing that, even if it's only for a couple tasks a day, can be extremely valuable.
That's great. Well, this has been a fascinating interview. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you so much. These were great questions.
Good, good. And I'm sure that we're going to re-listen to this episode to get all those, little, because I think a lot of those details about, the marketing and having a plan and just ways to save time in general, super helpful.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Trevor, thanks a lot for being on the podcast. This was great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You're in the right place. This is the All the Hats We Wear podcast. I'm your host, time management coach, and productivity expert, Scott Snow. This show will teach you, the entrepreneur, the time management skills you need to be joyful, productive, and fulfilled. This is episode 43. Today we have a fascinating guest. Super smart guy, and I think you'll get a lot of ideas from this podcast episode. Trevor Lohrbeer is a serial entrepreneur with a mission to help others live a more fulfilling life by reaching their potential. He does this by creating software and mental models that help people reason about the world and solve existing problems in new ways. His current project is Day Optimizer, a web app that helps freelancers and solopreneurs convert their task list into a daily schedule to help them focus on their priorities and live a more balanced life. You're meant to do great things. If you want to be an innovator and visionary, you have to manage your busy life like one. The All the Hats We Wear planner is the planner for the future. I want to give you a free month of the planner to try out for yourself. Nothing will slip through the cracks anymore. When you use the All the Hats We Wear planner, you'll have everything you need at your fingertips. All of your goals, a vision statement, a list of daily habits, and a checklist to track your progress. Key information for the small and large projects on your plate. Daily sheets to clarify your top outcomes for each day. A week at a glance section to plan for the coming weeks. And much more. The All the Hats We Wear planner will be your roadmap to a more joyful, productive, and fulfilling life. To claim your free month so you can see for yourself how it will streamline your busy life, visit allthehatswewear.com.